you going today? It is so good to see you. I am out on a very, very cold night in Melbourne town shooting on the brand new Tamron 16-30 f2.8. This is a full frame lens. It's got full metadata, autofocus, aperture control. You can do it all fly-by-wire. It's all electronic. And right now we're shooting on the Sony a7 IV. But what's super exciting about this lens is it's coming for both E mount and for Z mount. Let's get into it. Right now I'm using this on the Ronin RS Mini and we are walking across Flinders Street one-handed and change hands, but you can see here where we are. It's all happening at 16 mils. Now this is a full frame lens, 16-30 at 2.8. It fits in both the Sony ecosystem and in the Nikon ecosystem.
Tamron 16-30 f2.8 on the Sony a7 IV and on the Nikon Z5 II. We have the Z version and we have the E version. Pixel for pixel, looking at what this lens looks like. 1 second f2.8 base ISO. Things look very, very similar. Now, a reminder of how I try to do this is we equalize the files as much as we possibly can within the limits of what is not baked into the files, which I'm not sure anybody really knows exactly what's baked into the files on every camera. I'm not sure, that's for sure. We turn off color corrections. They are set to no color corrections on both cameras. Sharpening amount is turned to 0 on both cameras. Settings are identical except for color temperature, which is interesting because colors in these two images look pretty similar to me. There's a few differences, but the way these cameras are adjusting the files is quite different for them to have a similar outcome. This just simply says to me that these two sensors are quite different. And also looking closely at these files, I find that they're not exactly the same when it comes to contrast, when it comes to color. And of course, they're different when it comes to pixel count. If we look at the a7 IV, it's 7,008 pixels on the long edge. The Z5 II is 6,048 pixels on the long edge. Geez, there's not much of a difference when we're looking at the lettering, when we're looking at the trees, when we're looking at the color, when we're looking at everything really. It comes across as very similar. Now remember, very little is done to these files, but what I have done is lifted the shadows 50%, lifted the exposure 1 stop, completely dragged down the highlights, added in color, because without that, these files look like this, flat as a tack. No sharpening, no contrast. What's interesting about a lens like this that's not released yet, is there firmware in either of these cameras to adjust for them? And I think the answer is no. And thus we're probably seeing this as raw as we possibly can. And what's intriguing, well, is just how similar the files look. They really, really do look very similar. We will see this across maybe 5 to 10 examples. This video is just a first look at this lens. I will take it for a longer spin, but today's the launch day and I just thought I would get the word out there. That's what the image looks like as a whole. And for example, if we look up here in the corner as to how both cameras are behaving, when it comes to, for example, this particular flare. It is interesting to me that the Sony, for some reason, has got more green stuff and it's more obvious. And that simply might be just that small, very small differential in the fact that these cameras are about 15 centimeters, closer to 20 centimeters, around 7 to 8 inches apart. And is that enough, because it's moved more to the corner with the A7 IV, that it's creating those extra, I don't know, let's call them scales, like the scales on a lizard? Weird, isn't it? Now, another thing I just noticed here is if we go in really tight on this pole, there is a difference in what's going on here with this fringing. Now, I've only made it so big so it's clear to see. We can easily go out to 200%, and there's just more of it. Is that because of the difference in distance? I'd be surprised, as we're a fairly long way away from the corner now, but it's really hard to say. You just simply couldn't complain about either of those files. Yes, they're slightly different, but you can't complain. Very, very similar. I mean, I'll leave you to be the judge of this, and hopefully enough information is coming through on the YouTube compression. In my previous video, the massive video that I made comparing the R6 II, A7 IV, Z5 II, you can actually buy an original copy of that video for less than $5 and you can look at it in its highest possible quality. And the reason I decided to do that is I think being able to see that is really important. And of course, YouTube does compress these things a lot. They do an amazing job, but there is compression there. So there's really slight differences here in how these renders look. And what I mean when I say pixel for pixel is a pixel of the camera is represented by a pixel on the screen. All right, we'll keep moving because these files are very similar. The differences in them are so minor. And let's just not forget, we are on the same lens. Now, not physically the same lens, but the lens that's come out of the factory. It's the same model, and I have to say, these results are very, very similar. And if we started to adjust them to make them even more similar, they would be even more similar.
Neither of the manufacturers actually have a lens exactly like this. Definitely Nikon doesn't. The closest we have is the 14 to 30 f4, which obviously is an f4, not a 2.8, smidge wider. And then we have the 14 to 28 2.8. Astonishing lens, bigger, a little bit bigger. It's not that much bigger. It's an amazingly compact lens for what it is, but it is so much more expensive. All right, let's keep checking out this cool gear. And I've got to do the hand so it stops following me, and we can look around back down Flinders Street. Here we go.
ISO 100, we are pixel for pixel. Very, very similar result. I'll let you decide which you like better, but yes, these are performing very similarly. Now, the Nikon's at the top. Interesting. Have a look at that light there. I just noticed that there's just a little bit more fringing down here, and kind of almost makes no sense to me because it's the same lens. I wonder why that is. Is that due to the difference in pixels? Now, we are looking at 800%. But I did sort of see that. I can still see that. I can basically make that out at about 300%. Very, very minor difference. It's really interesting to me how there is these minor differences between how these cameras and lenses work. Just looking around to see what else we can find. Very, very similar outcomes. We are at 12,800, 1/4 of a second at f16 with the 16mm. Now, one thing to look at here is distortion. This line here is very straight. I don't think either of these cameras will be correcting for this lens because it's not released yet, so I doubt it. The Sony's on the top this time for some reason. I think it's to do with the time they were shot. Capture One has now got hot pixel removal. That is cool. That's a new feature that I did not know about. Both of these cameras had hot pixels, and that's just happening automatically, which is really cool. And when we zoom in, they disappear. So kudos to Capture One for doing that. I like it. Similar, I would say that the Sony to me looks slightly more grainy, and there's slightly more color noise in the A7 IV. But when it comes to overall fidelity, once we get to this sort of level of ISO, it's not a very big difference between them. A7 IV at the top does look slightly darker. The settings are identical. There's a little bit more detail in that clock face, and that might be the difference. Bring that down to 0. Yeah, there's a little bit more information in that clock face, in just simply in that the big hand on the clock, we are at 300%. And if we look at the DoubleTree by Hilton sign and the sign behind that, it does seem to be just slightly more flary on the Sony. For some reason at 300%, the noise looks really similar with these two cameras. Really similar. The lens is doing a great job. We are at f16. So let's have a look at these flares. The focus was in the background. Interestingly, it's in the background on the buildings. These don't feel overly sharp on either camera. There's 100% on both of them. Remember, we're at f16. And, well, we are getting Sun Star City here, no question. And I just want to show you, this is what Capture One is doing now. And you can see here, hot pixels on the Sony, hot pixel on the Nikon. We go in, and the hot pixels, have a look, they all disappear up here. And this one, these all disappear up here with both cameras. It's hard to know what that automatic process is doing to the actual files. And I will have to do some research to find out if that can be turned off, because this is a new feature that I have not seen before. Yeah, definitely when we look in the sky, there more color noise with the A7 IV. It's a pretty similar outcome. You wouldn't be unhappy with either of these. The lens is performing greatly wide open. Does not appear to be any distortion. Great result. Sony on the top, Nikon on the bottom. F11, we can see how it's reacting to the lights. Great. Let's have a look in here to look at purple fringing. No real sign of it on either. Oh, there's a little bit actually. Just a smidge of it here. This is a good lens. Good lens. Clock face, pretty similar results. Very, very similar results with both versions of this lens. Just really think you can't complain about either of them. They're just so similar. There's just a really, really minor differences. And I really think we're starting to look into areas of these cameras and sensors that we just simply don't have any control over. Like what sort of in-camera raw processing is happening with these files. You can see how similar they look. This is a 2-second exposure, f11, ISO 400, and we are at 24 mils on both cameras. I didn't get much time to capture the footage in this video, and this is the only daylight footage that I got. It's a long story why it's so little. Part of the reason is it's winter here and it's overcast most of the time. Both cameras are performing really well. What's interesting is when the sun is behind the tree, the purple fringing is more obvious, and that's because there is no sun. Whereas when you look at the image where the sun is in the frame, and this was just accidental, the purple fringing is less obvious because the whole area is more overexposed. When I come back to do the next more detailed video, I will ensure that they're both looking into the sun at the same time. There's our quick overview of the 16-30 ultra wide angle f2 Di3 VXT G2 from Tamron. Here's the specs. And as you can see, there's very slight differences in length and weight between the E and Z version. When are these lenses actually shipping? July 31st for the E version and 3 weeks later for the Z version on August 22nd, 2025. The official Australian pricing for both mounts of this lens is 1,799 Australian dollars, including GST. I do not have the official US dollar pricing, but I think it will land somewhere between 999 and 1,099 USD, excluding taxes. I'm not sure where the tariffs might make it land. As we can see from this video, an extremely capable lens, works perfectly on both the E and Z mount, and from an optical performance perspective, I would give it somewhere between a 99 and a 99.5% identical. And I don't think it comes down to differences in the lenses. I think it comes down to the differences in how those pixels are processed and how IBIS works, color science, micro lenses on photo sites, and even the differences in glass that sit on top of each brand's sensors. We can see from this video just how similar they are. You can't go wrong with either of these lenses on either of these cameras. All right, everybody, well, it's been so good to see you, and if this is your first time here, I'd love you to let me know, what do you think of this lens? It's weather sealed, it's full frame, it's 2.8, it's very light, and it is ultra wide. You can use it from landscape to architecture, and also, as you saw me doing, you can use it for vlogging. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. It's been so good to see you. And if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. All right, bye for now.